Welcome to how to make turn-to-edge applique shapes using starch and freezer paper. I'm Jennifer Dick with Everyday Stitches, and today I'm going to show you how to make a simple circular applique shape. The great thing about this shape is it has turned edges. So when you machine sew it down, when you're done, it will have the look of hand applique. So first, let's gather our supplies. You don't need a lot of stuff, and most of it you already have on hand. First off, you need your freezer paper. Just regular grocery store freezer paper is fine. You also need some starch, liquid starch concentrate. I just get this in the grocery store in the laundry aisle. Nothing special about it. Then you need your scissors. You need paper scissors, your good fabric scissors, small snips, and then you need something to make circles with. A compass is the best method to do this, but if you don't have a compass, you can use anything that's round in your house. Cups, bowls, plates, whatever you have that's the right size, that's listed on whatever pattern you happen to be using. Then you need a small little bowl and a paintbrush. Those are your basics to get you started. In addition to that, you'll want an iron. I like to use my secondary iron. This is just an inexpensive one I picked up, but it has a non-stick sole plate, and that really comes in handy when you're working with freezer paper or fusible web, things that stick. It's really nice because it's easy cleanup. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, on your mat, this is just a wool mat, you need your pressing surface in front of you. It's just easy to work straight on your ironing board or whatever you use for a pressing surface. Okay, so first we have to make the templates. It's a pretty easy process. You're going to cut out your freezer paper. Look on your pattern and whatever size it says. Cut your freezer paper a couple inches larger is good. And then we're going to pre-shrink the freezer paper. I like to do that because it does shrink up a little bit when it hits the heat, or when the heat hits it, and it just makes it so they all are the same size and there won't be any awkward shrinking when you're trying to make the actual template, when you're cutting it out. Okay, so I have just quickly gone over each one with the hot iron. I'm using it dry iron on the hottest temperature setting. And then we're just gonna stack the 3 layers up. 3 layers is enough. You could do more, but that would just be more. So 3 layers is plenty. And then here is the top one. Okay, very good. So now we have those pressed together. Now you're going to draw your circle on there. So using your compass and whatever sizes, just draw your circles. Pretty easy stuff. Okay, so then when those are drawn, this is what you'll have. Now we're going to cut out on the line with your paper scissors. A couple hints for cutting. I know we all know how to cut because we probably all went to kindergarten, but just a few reminders. You want to open up your scissors all the way and put it clear in that V and take your cut. That will prevent little jagged edges, and take a big sweeping cut and reposition when you need to. Okay, so also you're going to move your paper, not your scissors. Keep your scissors steady. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and cut all the way around on the outside and the inside on the line. Then when you're done, you want to check it on the back side and make sure your edges are as smooth as you want them to be. Cutting out your template is the time to be precise, because if you have little jagged edges, it will show on your applique shape. So now's the time to get all your little perfectionist tendencies out and really take care on this part. Okay, so when it's all cut out, this is what we're gonna have. And this is our template. It's that simple. 3 layers of freezer paper, the design traced and cut out on the line. So now let's get to the fun part. The starching. This is more kindergarten stuff. You get to play with your paintbrush and your starch. Okay, so just center your template on your applique fabric. Again, you're gonna cut it just a little bit bigger than what it's called for in the pattern. And you just press it down. Make sure you get close to the edge and get it really tight. And there you go, it is pressed. You can use these templates several times, so you don't have to make a whole bunch. I would make several to start with, just so you always have one ready to go. And also, if you're doing a lot of the same shape, it's nice to be able to do them in groups, just to make it go a little faster. Okay, so now we're gonna cut out around the edge, and you're gonna leave your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So just eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you're gonna err, I would err on the side of too narrow rather than too wide. But you should be able to eyeball a pretty accurate 1/4 inch. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's just gonna be tucked under, but you don't want it too out of control messy. In case you're working with a light fabric, you don't want it to show through. So there we go. We've come back to the beginning, and there you go. Now we're going to prepare our starch. I like to use about 50-50 starch concentrate to water. There's no need to use it full strength, the concentrate, because it's just not necessary. A 50-50 solution will hold the seam allowance. Okay, so here we go. We're just gonna paint that starch solution on the edge. Now, one thing to keep in mind, try to keep it just on the seam allowance. You don't want to get too far onto the paper, because since we're using the heat on the edge, the heat of the iron, it will over time distort this template. So if you find your template is not the right size anymore or gets messy edges, then you'll want to swap it out for a new template. But definitely keeping that starch on the seam allowance rather than on the paper will help. And there's no reason for it to be on the paper, because that is not what you want stuck down. You want the seam allowance stuck down, not the paper. Okay, so there you go. You can see I've gone around the whole thing. And now we're gonna go to our hot iron, and we're gonna just start going around the edge with the iron. And this first time around, we're just gonna try to train that seam allowance. Just kind of train it to where you want it to go. So we're not gonna really press it down hard yet. So just use your fingers, be careful. Obviously the iron is hot, and you can feel the edge of that. We use the 3 layers, so you can feel the edge of the fabric hitting the edge of the template. And that's why you cut it out very accurately, because whatever your template looks like, your fabric is going to look like. So just go around pretty gentle. You can see I'm not really pressing it yet. I'm just going around the edge. Okay, so I'm back to where I was. Now is the time you want to turn it over and look and make sure that it is perfectly round the way you like it. And now is the time to make any changes. If there's a jagged edge or something weird going on, now's the time to change it. So Now that I'm happy with that, now I go back. And now is when I really press it, and you want to press it until that seam allowance is dry. And you can see it is sticking very nicely, just the way we want it. So you just keep going around. There we are back at the beginning. And there it is perfectly sewn down. And you can see that is exactly the way you want it. Okay, so now we're going to cut out the center and do this whole process again from the center. And I have another one done. It's already cut out. I use my little snips because honestly, the sharper the scissors, the less room for error. Now for this one, the outer one, we did not need to clip the seams because outer seams just hug to the side of that freezer paper with no problem. But this inner one, you're going to need to clip the seams. So just take your little snips and cut straight in. You can see where I've done it around there. And you cut straight in towards the freezer paper. And you want to go almost to the freezer paper. Don't cut into it because then you'll have a hole on the front of your applique shape. And I'm cutting about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch apart. It's not an exact science. Whatever works for you is fine. Okay, so we've got that cut out and clipped. So now we go back to our paintbrush and starch, and we do this all over again. So you're just painting around, oh, fairly generously, but not sloppy generously. And if that makes sense. And you go back to the beginning. I didn't get enough over there, so there you go. All right, so you can see it is all covered. So now here's a time, if you own one of these Clover little mini irons or whatever brand you have, this is a good application for this. It really helps in these tighter spots to get in there so you don't have to worry about burning yourself on your big iron. So using the little Clover, you're going to do the same thing. I mean the little mini iron. You're going to do the same thing. You're just training it so it all stays where you want it, and you can see how it's going to look. Okay, so you can see I'm back to the beginning. So now again, I always put that in a little cup. It just makes it a little sturdier because that gets really hot. Okay, so you look around, you can see where some of the starch got on the freezer paper. But I'm very happy with that. I think that'll work. Okay, so then you go back around again like we did before, and you just press it down till it's dry. For the sake of speed for this video, I will go back to my big iron. And you can certainly do this with your big iron if you don't have a mini one. Just be very careful with your fingers because the inner curve doesn't want to play quite as nicely as the outer curve. And, you know, there's more surface there to burn yourself with. So just be careful and it'll work. Okay, so there it is all pressed down and dry, and there we go. So we are done, and you can see where the seam allowance is. Okay, so this is still pretty hot, so let it cool off. If I were doing a lot of these, like I said, I'd be doing them in groups. So by the time I got to the end, this one would be cool. But for the interests of speed, I'm going to go ahead and take that out, even though it's a little warm. And there you have it. You can go back over and touch that again, touch up that, make sure it lays flat. But there you go. Now you have your shape. And it really is that easy, and it really does work as easily as this. Okay, so let's talk about how you're going to sew this down. We've got, for this particular one, we're going to have a different color in the center than the background. So what you want to do is cut your little center square a little bit bigger than the circle, and make sure you center it on there. Now from here you have many options on how to sew it down. My favorite is to use invisible thread with a zigzag stitch, and I use the invisible in the top and the bobbin, and you just go around with your little zigzag and it just disappears right into it, and nobody will ever know it's not hand applique, unless you tell them, of course. So when you're done, okay, let's talk about other types of sewing first. So if you don't want to use invisible, you can do a little zigzag with thread that matches. You can do a blind hem with thread that matches. You can do contrasting thread. You could do a dark purple. You could do black. If you want it orange, you could do orange, whatever you want. It just depends on the look you're going for. If you want a super casual, fun look, you can do go around 3 straight lines with black and make them, you know, not perfectly straight, and that's a fun look. If you have a triple stitch, you certainly can do that too. Okay, once you are sewn, you're gonna want to come around and clip out, excuse me, you're gonna clip out the seam allowance and make this circular. And you know, you're gonna trim all that bulk out. Okay, so you have this sewn. Now on your background, you're gonna prepare your background however it says to in the pattern. Now you're gonna place this down, centered on your background, and you're gonna go around the outside edge, probably the same way that you did the inner, but you know, depending on what you're going for. You might want to do something different. So when it's all sewn down, you just, on the back side, you just cut out the background, leaving about 1/4 of an inch around, and that will really help with the bulk when you're quilting. That's what that's for. Okay, so that is how you prepare your shapes and a little bit about how you sew them down. I want to show you how versatile this is. We did a simple circle there, but you can do more complex things. This is a pattern called Runner's High Quilt. It's a shoe, as you can see. And here is the freezer paper template I made. And I did it the same way with three layers, and I cut it out on the line, and here's the little sole, and it's just that simple. And I went around with the iron just exactly like I showed you. And here is the shoe. You can see the seam allowance turned under. And since this is a layered applique on this, I didn't have to turn under that top part because it's going to be on the bottom. So you lay your sole down, and then you lay your shoe on top. And there you go. You're ready to sew that onto your background. So it's quite versatile, and you can use it in a lot of ways, and it really makes it easy. When you're done, you're done. There's nothing left to do on your pattern. I mean, on your applique block. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. That was how to make turned edge applique shapes using starch and freezer paper. If you like what you've seen, please hit subscribe.